Hi, welcome to another episode of Beyond Just Fine. I was thinking about something the other day that I wanted to share with you. A while ago, I came across a concept that I tried to adapt into my everyday life, and I saw a reel about it on Instagram recently where it was referred to as the burnt toast theory, and it reminded me how much I like the idea. Now, it's not really a theory in the scientific sense, it's more of a little way of looking at life that I've personally found quite comforting. The burnt toast theory is the idea that sometimes something that feels like an inconvenience in the moment, like burning the toast, can alter our timeline to either protect us from a not so great event or redirect us towards an unexpected positive event. So imagine we burn the toast in the morning and we have to make it again. And by doing so, we end up leaving the house 5 minutes later than planned. Because we're late, we miss the train that we normally take. We get on the next train instead, and perhaps by doing so, we bump into someone we haven't seen for years. And there can be lots of little examples of this in everyday life. Maybe we take the wrong turn when we're driving or walking somewhere and discover a little cafe or a shop that we wouldn't have otherwise found. Or perhaps a friend cancels plans at the last minute. We're initially disappointed, but we end up having a really lovely quiet evening at home, or we use the time to complete a task that we've been meaning to do. Now, whilst I like the idea of the burnt toast theory, and I've sometimes experienced those moments myself, I kind of added my own little bit to it. I don't necessarily think that everything inconvenient is going to lead me towards something good. We don't always need to find a positive meaning in what happens. Sometimes burnt toast is just burnt toast. Sometimes we miss the train because we were just running late. And sometimes plans get cancelled and we're simply disappointed. But remember, in the last episode on overthinking, we briefly mentioned about the things that we can and we can't control. And I think that concept works quite well here. Because sometimes when little things go wrong, our first reaction can sometimes be to decide what that thing means. Our brain can be very quick to turn something relatively minor into a prediction about the rest of the day. Sometimes we can catastrophize without even realize we're doing it. So something small happens, and almost immediately we attach a much bigger meaning to it. Toast is burnt, and somehow that can become evidence that the whole day is going to be terrible. But actually, how do we know that? We only know what's happened so far. We burnt the toast. We're late leaving the house. That's what we know. We don't know what happens next. So those two words can actually be quite helpful so far. Things haven't gone to plan so far. I'm having a difficult morning so far. My plans have changed so far. It doesn't necessarily mean everything's going to work out perfectly, just as it doesn't necessarily mean that everything will go wrong for the rest of the day. It just reminds me to not automatically make a prediction about something I haven't experienced yet. And I think we sometimes do this because uncertainty can feel uncomfortable. We want to know whether something is going to work out. We want to know how a situation is going to end. So when something unexpected happens, we can very quickly create a story around it. This is bad. This is going to cause problems. It's going to be one of those days. But we don't actually know that yet. All we know what has happened so far. And that's why I think the idea of looking at what we can and what we can't control can be so important. I can't change the fact that I'm running late, but I can decide whether I spend the next 20 minutes making myself even more stressed about it. I can't stop someone from cancelling plans, but I can decide what I want to do with the evening that I've suddenly got. I can't unburn the toast, but I can make another piece. Basically, I can't always control what happens, but I can control how I respond to it. And I know that sounds incredibly simple, but perhaps that's the point. Because sometimes the thing that makes a difficult moment worse isn't necessarily the thing that actually happened, it's what we do with it afterwards. We can experience one frustrating moment, and then we could spend the next hour worrying about all the things that might happen because of it. We burn the toast, and suddenly we may feel the whole day is ruined. We miss the train, and suddenly we can be convinced everything is going to be difficult. Someone cancels plans, and somehow we can decide that it's going to be a disappointing evening. But none of those things in themselves actually tell us what happens next. They're just what's happened so far. And perhaps instead of trying to predict the rest of the day, we can just come back to what we actually know. This has happened. I don't like it, but what can I control now? And then we can carry on. I think about this as a little bit like reading a book. If we were reading a novel and something went wrong for the main character, we wouldn't necessarily put the book down and say, well, that's it, everything's gone wrong. We'd keep on reading because we know there's another chapter. But when it's our own lives, we don't always give ourselves the same perspective. Something happens and we may immediately think, this isn't how it was supposed to go to plan. Everything is now ruined. But perhaps we're just somewhere in the middle of the story. We haven't reached the next chapter yet, so we don't know what's going to happen next. And maybe that's my version of the burnt toast theory. Not that every inconvenience is secretly a blessing, but also not immediately deciding that it's a bad thing. Sometimes it will lead somewhere unexpected, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it will simply be an inconvenience that passes, and that's okay. We don't have to turn every difficult moment into a life lesson. We can be annoyed, we can be disappointed, and we can acknowledge that something hasn't gone the way that we wanted it to. But we don't have to let that one moment become the story for the entire day. We don't have to catastrophize the next 5 hours because of the last 5 minutes. We can't always choose what happens, but we can choose how we respond to what happens. So maybe next time you burn the toast, miss the train, have our plans cancelled, or we just have one of those little frustrating moments, we can remind ourselves that's what's happened so far. What can I control now? And then we can carry on. We just have to remember that it isn't the whole story. We don't need to decide the ending from the middle of the story. The story's still unfolding. There's still another chapter. As always, be kind to yourself. Remember to like and subscribe. Take care, and I'll see you soon.